All right, well, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you may be. Thank you for standing by, and welcome to today's channel-focused community webinar. Our topic for today is Data-Driven Channel Management, Skate to Where the Puck is Going. All phone lines are currently in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer session with additional instructions being given at that time. You can ask a question at any time using the chat window located in the control panel, and all chat questions will be answered at the end of the presentation with the rest of the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded, and everyone on the call will get a copy of the recording and slides. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Sarbo is a principal in the ZS Associates San Francisco office with responsibility for ZS's sales, channel strategy, and management practice. And Alex Southworth is an associate principal at ZS Associates in Los Angeles and is a leader in their high-tech practice. Alex, John, take it away.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks to you again for joining. Over the next 30 minutes, there's really going to be about three things that we're going to focus on. First, we're going to share the results from research that ZS recently conducted on the state of channel analytics in the high-tech industry. Second, we'll share some best practices that we gathered through that research as well as in work with our clients regarding how leaders are using predictive analytics to drive channel performance. And then finally, we're going to share our point of view, what we've learned through this work on how others can develop their capabilities in this area and really start to optimize their investments in the channel. Okay. So we can go ahead and advance the slide, Alex. Okay, so Sam mentioned as at the beginning, I'm John DeSarbo, and we'll move back to our pictures here so you can see what we look like. I am John DeSarbo, and I'll start the presentation, and then I'll be joined by my colleague Alex. The two of us actually, as Sam mentioned, focused on channel strategy and management primarily in the high-tech industry, and have been active participants in Channel Focus and BAPTI. Have given a few webinars in the past, so recognize some of the names on the registration list, so happy to be spending a little bit of time with all of you again today. Okay, so first, I've got to give you the obligatory elevator pitch for those of you who don't know ZS Associates. So just a couple minutes. So first of all, so ZS is the largest professional services firm focused exclusively on sales and marketing. Big organization of close to 5,000 people, and all we do is focus on sales and marketing across a variety of industries around the world, including high tech. And while we're narrowly focused on sales and marketing solutions, we have a pretty broad range of offerings from research and strategy to deep analytics. We have some proprietary technology that we developed, and in many cases, clients will outsource their operations to us. So lots more information about our firm overall on our website. So I'll leave it at that and just talk to you a little bit about, what we do in the channel space. So in high tech and specifically related to channels, we help our clients really in three ways. One is by helping define channel strategy. So what are the routes to market and what role will partners play in those routes? Program design, so how do we operationalize our strategy? So we'll help program and organizational design. We'll get into channel incentives and pricing to really drive and execute the strategy. And then lastly, really what we're going to be talking more about today is channel management, which is really helping allocate or optimize the allocation of resources, so people and dollars, to drive performance, and then measuring the impact on that performance both quantitatively and qualitatively. So those are the three things we do, and we've been at this for quite some time now, and over the years we've developed some tools that are cloud-based, which we've branded Charge, and we bring those tools to bear in each of these three types of engagements. So as I said, what we're going to be talking about today is data-driven channel management, and so it's really our third pillar there that we're going to be drilling down into. Okay. So some of you probably wondered about the title, you know, skate to where the puck is going. Why did we choose that phrase? Well, when we were contemplating presenting this research publicly, to date we've only been sharing it with our clients. We looked at the webinar schedule and saw that we would be in smack in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs for professional hockey, and we said, well, why don't we go with that theme, because that at least will be we'll be benefiting from sort of the halo effect of people maybe being hockey fans. So that's where we are for, you know, an update. There's 3 teams that have advanced to the next round: the St. Louis Blues, the Penguins, Tampa Bay Lightning, and tonight there's actually, for folks on the West Coast, Game 7, the San Jose Sharks versus the Nashville Predators. So must-see TV. My team's out of it, so I'll probably watch something else. But so that's the reason for the hockey theme, and there's a quote that we chose that we're kind of rallying around from Wayne Gretzky, you know, one of the greatest hockey players of all time. And he supposedly said, although some people said it was his father who said this, "I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been." And it just seemed like a pretty powerful image for what we see as a really hot topic today in the channel space, which is really predictive analytics. How do you use analytics to anticipate the impact of your future decisions versus analyze the impact from past decisions? And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. I think, you know, in business generally, that seems to be where a lot of the BI analytics focus has been, and you know, we've been particularly interested in this area for probably, I don't know, 18 months to 2 years ago, 2 years from now at ZS. So that's what we'll talk about for the next, you know, 20 minutes or so. So to move forward, you know, I guess before we dive into sort of the research, there was one fundamental question that we had going into this, which is anybody really doing this, right? This is, you know, everyone's talking about predictive analytics or prescriptive analytics, but is anyone really using them in the channel space in the way that you would see, you know, people tout this concept in the press, you know, people drawing comparisons to Amazon and Netflix and so forth. It's definitely a buzzword. I've been at conferences over, say, the last 6 months or so, and it's a hot topic. At BAPTI Channel Focus about a few weeks ago, there were the breakout sessions which were highly attended. But with the you know, with the interest, there's also a healthy amount of skepticism as well. And just anecdotally, while you know, there are lots of people talking about this, most of what we're hearing is about the struggles, about not quite being able to capitalize on the vision. So that is sort of the backdrop for the research that we chose to conduct. So late last year, we surveyed 100 hardware and software vendors in the U.S., and we really, with the objective of understanding what the state of the state is. You know, how are people using channel analytics, and have they gotten to the point where they can be predictive? So I'll turn it over to Alex now, who'll go through some of this, and we'll show you what we found.
Thank you, John. So as John mentioned, late in 2015, we spent a good amount of time surveying the industry to get a sense of what the challenges were, but also what the overall appetite was for channel analytics. So, you know, as we did this survey, the first question that we actually asked is we wanted to really baseline what the confidence level of these channel leaders in the industry were around their ability to focus their investments and in driving really the most important growth opportunities. And what we found was, you know, only about 60% of channel leaders in the US believed that they were focused on what they saw as being the most important growth opportunities. So 40% of them, you know, perceived that they were kind of missing the mark, and they weren't focused really in the right areas. And then what we did was we asked this series of other questions, really at a high level, to understand what their obstacles were, and specifically why they weren't using analytics to support channel management and really start adopting a data-driven channel management approach. And interestingly, probably about just over actually 8% of the respondents highlighted that they had significant obstacles that actually limited them from adopting channel analytics to support their activities. So what we did was we basically decided to dig a bit deeper into understanding what those obstacles were. And we asked them to respond to get a sense of where those challenges actually lay. And there were 5 broad categories that we asked them to respond to. The first one was around data quality. So, this is typically the lack of data or inconsistent data or inaccurate data as well. The second area was organization silos. So, as we all know, the channel organization is often spread across multiple organizations, and there isn't really a standard structure. And the view was that in some cases, the decision-making wasn't clear in where the roles and responsibilities were. The other area we wanted to probe was really around any gaps in terms of both the skills and also the tool set to actually execute analytics. We also looked into the lack of processes around channel management and also data proliferation. So this was the effect of having instances of data floating around the organization and people basing decisions off maybe out-of-date data or maybe Excel spreadsheets that had been created a few weeks ago by various organizations that maybe didn't understand the details that sat in the data. So before we moved on and showed you the results of this, what we wanted to do was we wanted to take the opportunity here to really just survey the audience and get a sense from you guys in terms of what you see as being the biggest issues in your organizations that are really stopping you from moving forward with channel analytics. So I'm going to pass it back over to Sam to run the poll at this stage.
Thanks, Alex. I'm launching the poll now, ladies and gentlemen. So again, the question is, which of these common issues do you see as the biggest challenge in your organization? So feel free to pick your answer, and we'll leave this open, excuse me, for 30, 45 seconds to let everyone get a chance to cast a vote.
You can't vote for more than one. I'm sure that's what some people are thinking.
Got about half the audience in. We'll leave it open for another 10, 15 seconds to let anyone else vote that would like to. Okay. So, looks like about 50% of everyone who answered feels that poor data quality is a major issue, 13% organizational silos, and then another bulk, about a third, lack of process.
Got it.
Well,
We can maybe
back to you, Alex.
Yeah, so I'll kind of do the big reveal here. So we actually, I think the respondents, the results that we got from the survey kind of seem to really, I think, mimic some of the results that we got here in our poll. And I think, anecdotally, what we've heard in a lot of the conversations that we've had with clients is that data quality is really the big, the biggest of all the obstacles, the big impeder of people moving forward with channel analytics. But what we found that was interesting was that organization silos and the fact that the channel organization was spread over lots of different silos was also a very big driver. Now, the way we phrased the question here was a bit different from the way that we took the poll. And we asked people to select their top 3 issues. But if you just look at the #1 issues, over 1/3 of the channel leaders here cited poor data quality as their #1 issue. So that corresponds to about 50% of the attendees. So there's, I think clearly that's probably one of the things that is the biggest obstacle that's out there from driving it. But what was interesting also in these results was some of the other ones and some of the other things and the other factors came out as being relatively large. So I'm going to pass over to John at this stage, and he's going to talk a bit more about the core capabilities that we've seen that analytics can be used for within data management.
Right, and I think the survey results that we've shared so far, I guess, kind of prove the anecdotal observation that, and our hypothesis that we had, that this is clearly an area where there's still a lot of work to do. And if you just reflect on the fact that of the 100 companies we surveyed, 80 of them, 80% actually have challenges. We can point to some issues that I'm sure all of us live with every day. It's clear that it would be the minority of companies that are really advanced. So we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and understand that, and to get a little bit more specific around the current capabilities. So what we did is, through the research, we identified 5 core capabilities that enable data-driven channel management. So they're here on the slide. Partner segmentation, which is using analytics to group like partners in different ways. Market coverage and capacity planning, which is understanding your opportunity, your addressable market, and then aligning your resources against that optimally. Goal setting, which is setting targets for both partners as well as your sales team. Budget and resource allocation is setting the optimal budget and then allocating that budget into different program elements, incentives, and so forth, and then allocating that to different partners. And the 5th is performance and impact analysis. So not only looking at what the impact of your investments has been, but projecting what the impact might be. So we looked at each of these 5 capabilities for vendors to provide their perspective as to where they were struggling, where they felt they had sufficient capabilities, and where they were best in class. And here on the next slide, we'll show you, which is something that's probably the results, which were not really that surprising, is that there's a real range of capabilities in the industry. On the one hand, about a quarter of the companies that we've surveyed, this is consistent with, I guess, our observations, again, anecdotally, really would consider themselves best in class in all 5 of those areas, right? So if you take the 5 that I listed on the previous page, they believe that they've invested and developed the capabilities in each of those areas, and maybe they're not where they ultimately need to get to, but they feel they get the strength. It's a competitive advantage. On the flip side, there's about a quarter, or 25%, of companies that indicated they have challenges in this area, and even of that 25%, the 3% on the very end, these sitters, these are companies that said, we don't have the adequate capabilities in any of the 5 areas. So there's a quarter will feel like that they're struggling at least in one area, maybe are sufficient in others, but even this the small numbers here that are just it's a real gap. And then, not surprisingly, there's everyone in the middle, which is about half of the companies that feel like they've got basic capabilities in most of those in the 5 areas, and in maybe one they've actually developed a particular strength. So they're what we're calling the walkers. And I guess you can all on the call sort of place yourself mentally as to where you are. The other key insight is that this is a moving picture, and what we've seen is, in talking with companies that are in each of these 3 states, they're developing, they're on a journey, right, from crawling to running, from moving from having data to be able to make decisions optimally. The crawlers and those that are sitting, they're struggling with the data quality issues, and they're really they're focusing on developing what we would call descriptive analytics and reporting capabilities. They really want to understand what happened. How's our channel performing? And historically, that's kind of the first step in this journey. The walkers are focused on diagnostic reporting. They're trying to figure out why did something happen. So they're able to observe past trends, and they're trying to correlate decisions that were made in the past with recent performance. So they're really focused on why did it happen. And then those that are running, that are focused on more predictive or prescriptive analytics, they're really at the state where they're trying to develop the capabilities to determine what if, what will happen if they make certain decisions. And it's still only a very minority of those that are running that feel like they're able to do that in an effective, scalable way. But it's a big focus, and it's really where they're putting their energies. So now Alex is going to go we really want to understand a little bit more about what are the best practices, what are the runners doing, and he'll take you through a few examples.
Yes, and I think going back to the theme of this webinar about skating to where the puck's going. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to just share with you some examples of what we've seen in through partially conducting the survey and getting some of the feedback and doing some of the follow-up that we did on the survey, but also through some of the work that we've been doing with some of our clients around what we consider to be some of the best-in-class applications of predictive analytics in the industry. So as we just step back for a second, I think there's three core kind of questions that clients of ours are looking to answer with predictive analytics. And they broadly fall into the 5 categories that John talked about previously in terms of the core capabilities around data-driven channel management. And those core questions are really, firstly, which partners are the highest growth partners and have the highest potential and the ones that we want to invest in, okay? The second question is, once we've identified who those partners are, how much should we invest in them in order to maximize our return on investment? And it's not just around MDS, it's also to what extent should we allocate sales resources to supporting them? How should they fit into our partner program? A number of those sort of questions. And then the final question is really around, once we've identified those partners and we've identified that we're going to invest in them, how can we really help them target very specific opportunities to cross-sell or upsell through to their existing customers and really help them with closing that final deal, that final mile of the deal, okay? So the first question is really around identifying which partners to invest in. And I think if you step back and I think about how I've answered this question in terms of best-in-class companies, probably about 5 years ago certainly, I would say that the best-in-class companies were really using probably a couple of different dimensions to segment partners. I'd say the first and most certainly the dominant segmentation area was sales. So how much revenue was the partner driving? And that would be used to determine how important that partner is. There were other companies that I was working with who have used other dimensions such as firmographic data around industries and also competencies as well. So I think 5 years ago, I think that would have been very much the norm around the best-in-class companies. What we're increasingly seeing now is that some clients of ours and some companies are starting to move away from just thinking about performance as being pure revenue and starting to think about profits. not just gross profits and the mix of products that the partners are selling, but increasingly they're starting to look at EBITDA and what's the cost of actually serving those specific customers, those specific partners, and then they're ranking and looking at the partners based on that dimension. The other dimension that we've seen a lot of companies also moving into is what we're referring to as predictive, potential. Now, in layman's terms, this is basically comparing peers. So taking a partner, looking at their peers and saying, well, if the partner next to them is doing this much revenue, why aren't they doing that much revenue? And what we've increasingly seen is that companies are starting to cluster their partners into very discrete groups and doing this peer-to-peer comparison, and that's enabling them to better predict what the maximum potential revenue or even profit is that specific partner can be driving. And then the third dimension that we've seen a lot of work being done around is around loyalty. This is essentially, who are the most loyal partners to us? Who are the partners that have invested in our brand and have demonstrated that they are willing to drive our business? And obviously, investing in those partners is clearly going to give you more return on investment. So, there are a lot of behavioral indicators that companies are starting to increasingly look at. Things like the companies that have invested more in terms of driving certifications. There are even some metrics that we've heard of clients using which involve literally recording how many times the partner has logged onto a portal is a great indicator as to how loyal they are. So thinking about all of these different dimensions, what we're seeing is that clients are increasingly using all of these different dimensions to better segment their partners and really help them in terms of identifying who are the partners that are going to give us the best ROI when we invest the resources in them. So the second area that we've seen, the second question I should say that we've seen a lot of companies look to answer is really around, once you've identified the partners that you're going to invest in, it's really determining how much you're going to invest in those partners. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, I think one of the things that a lot of companies are starting to do is they're starting to determine what the maximum potential of the partner is, in addition to their absolute performance, through this clustering approach. But increasingly, the other side of the coin is that companies are also starting to look at what is being referred to as the run rate performance of partners as well. So this is taking a specific product set and saying, for a partner, how much of their business is standard business that they would be able to drive without doing very much marketing? How much of it is just repeat business or relatively, small deals that aren't really solution-centric? Okay, and that's giving companies a very good baseline in terms of the base performance of the partners, and it's also enabling them to do a lot of forecasting as well in terms of what's the revenue that they can guarantee. Now, increasingly, especially over the last 6 to 12 months, we've increasingly started to have some conversations with some clients around joining those two different points of reference. So the partner potential and the run rate performance of a partner, and really putting in a stimulus response curve, an S-curve, through those 2 points, which will enable us to ultimately, for each partner, determine what the incremental ROI is of an incremental dollar. And as we start having conversations with some of our customers and clients, we're increasingly seeing that this is becoming a technique that people are looking into. So the final area that we've seen a lot of people start pursuing is really, what are the opportunities? So once you've identified the partners, once you've determined how much you're going to invest in them, it's really around identifying what their focus should be. So who are the customers that they should be focusing on? And specifically, what are the analytic cross-sell and upsell opportunities that they have within their end customers? And what we've seen here is that companies, certainly on the direct side, are increasingly looking to companies such as Amazon and Netflix and looking at the lookalike models that they have adopted to make recommendations to end customers, and they're adopting some of the same algorithms to start determining where the cross-sell and upsell opportunities are within their existing installed base. What we've done is we've adopted what we refer to as the KNN, the K-nearest neighbor algorithm, machine learning algorithm, to systematically process transaction data going back, in some cases back 4 or 5 years, to start identifying within for a specific partner who those opportunities are and where those opportunities are. But what we've also heard other clients do, and this is almost a scaled back, kind of more simple approach, is literally go to each of their sales reps and say to those, and ask the sales reps, okay, so what are the natural next logical products that people buy after a specific product? And then do a basic query within their database of transactions to identify customers that have bought a product in the past and then are more likely to buy a new product, and then feed that information, importantly, back to the partners to basically improve the support that they're providing through to their partners and provide that incremental value to the end partners as well. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to now pass it over back to John, and he's going to really talk through some of the foundational elements that need to be in place to start driving some of these more advanced analytics approaches that we've talked through.
Yeah, so where do you start, right? I think if you reflect, 80% of folks have some challenges in this area, and we really just double-clicked on the runners there in those past few slides. Where do you start to move to be able to do some of that? You're not surprisingly, particularly given the way we responded to the poll and some of the findings, the first place to start is really data, right? However, I think when people think of this, the first inclination is, well, we got to clean up our data. We need better data quality. That's part of it. But I think what we're seeing is just as important is data integration, and this is pulling together different types of data that enable you to do some interesting type of analysis to really generate more actionable insights. So this is a schematic here that we're showing, which is it's conceptual. It's not meant to be, I guess, very, very, very detailed. But essentially, what we're seeing is that the runners are pulling together data sets that that can be used in different ways. So there's data, if you just say and look on the bottom left, that really, if you think back to Alex going through that stimulus response for number 2 of the examples we showed, this is data around the stimulus. So one key data set is just how much are we investing in things like MDF, co-op, how are we incenting our sales team. There are other, obviously, different types of investments that you would make. It's making sure you have an understanding of what investments, what stimuli were put into the channel when, right? And the upper left is then the response, right? What was the response in terms of how the partners performed as a result of those investments? And obviously, one element of that is the sales data, the point of sale information. And that's very important, but there are other data sets that indicate response, how you're being portrayed on partners' websites and in social media, for example, the extent to which they're interacting with you in campaigns. So I think thinking broadly about partner performance is another thing that we see the runners doing. That the point of sale information is key, but I think that there's been for a lot of companies, almost over focus on that being the, kind of the sole source of information that's needed. It's actually one of many types. So, stimulus response, just the other categories here is obviously to inform the segmentation. It's the partner profile information you have in your CRM or PRM system, but also information that you capture through use of the portal and participation in, say, certification, specialization programs to a learning management system. There's a data set there. And then there's kind of this, almost environmental set of data that would be, how your pricing has changed over time, different changes to policies around special pricing and so forth, and then how your portfolio has changed, and how there's, promotions and so forth. So these are all different data sets that should be put together. There are others. For example, we don't have any of the third-party data sources that you would pull in for to help with profiling or competitive information. But the idea is to start to build the capability to marry these different data sets and allow you to do some types of analysis that maybe you couldn't have been done solely by mining just sales data, which is typically where people were focusing more in the past. So focusing on, yes, data quality, but data integration is the first step. Then I guess the next question is, why is this so hard? And I think the other observation we have is when you look at the leaders, they've done more than just invest in technology, right? There's kind of three ingredients to their special sauce, right? They've developed the data integration and management skills, so they're really adept at pulling together different data sets and have moved away from using things like Excel to manage data, but use some more powerful tools. So there's obviously the capability to use those. Obviously the data scientists, the folks that talk about it, the people who have the ability to use the business intelligence and analytics capabilities, statistical capabilities and so forth, the ability to build these models, use the algorithms that we were discussing. So that's a key set. And I think the one that people don't talk enough about is just channel DNA and domain experience. I think there's one observation we made where a lot of companies, because it is so difficult to get analytics skills and data management skills, are creating a center of excellence that serves the entire business. So they'll conduct analytics on behalf of finance and the marketing team, supply chain, and so forth. And one challenge that we're seeing is that sometimes the channel is an afterthought in companies that really maybe don't have that channel DNA. So there isn't the domain expertise within those centers to do these analytics. And so sometimes, while the statistics and the math that they can do is fantastic, it's difficult for them to actually apply it to the decisions that channel managers make. So you kind of need that as well. So these three pieces, I think, are the key building blocks that are required to start integrating data sets and doing some of this analytics. So that's I think that's what we should all be shooting for. Some key takeaways, I guess, to wrap up here. Just want to be respectful of everyone's time and open it up for questions. Number one, I think it's definitely cutting edge stuff. 8 of 10 companies that we've talked to actually report issues that they're working through, and but there are those that actually have made progress and are actually applying predictive analytics. Companies fall along the spectrum. It's a journey, and thinking about how to progress on that journey is key. You don't shoot to do the most complicated stuff first. It's really mapping out a roadmap to get you there. The best-in-class companies are really using analytics to cover those 3 questions that Alex talked about. Which partner should we invest in? How much and where? And what opportunities should we be driving them to through cross-selling and upselling? And then lastly, really to get started, it's about starting with a foundation. It's putting in place the capability to integrate multiple data sources along with the sales data And to do that actually and to use that is going to require more than technology. So that's the key takeaways. Sam, why don't we open it up for questions? I'm sure we have one or two that have come through. And while we're going through this, you can feel free to copy down our contact information and reach out to Alex and I if we don't have time to answer the questions that you might have.
Sounds good. Thank you, John. We will open up for Q&A right now. Just for anyone that might have missed it at the very beginning, if you would like to ask a question, you can do so using the chat window located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We had one question that came in right around the poll, John and Alex, and maybe you might be able to clarify. What's the difference between poor data and data proliferation? If you can elaborate on the differences.
Yeah, so poor data has to do with just accuracy of the information that you're capturing, right? So it's kind of the accuracy or in precision of the data. So it's how well does that data represent reality? Data proliferation is having too much data, right? We have some clients that have talked about this idea of there being spread marks, right? Every function has an Excel spreadsheet that they use, and they sit on the network, and none of them sit together, and people don't know where to go to find the data that they need because it's spread out in too many different places. It's fragmented. So that's the difference between the two. One has to do with sort of the ability to use the data that you have because of its accuracy. The other has to do with just being overwhelmed with the information that's available.
Excellent. Another question from the 100 vendors that you polled, what was their primary channel GTM? Was it a distributor, reseller, or other? ISV, SISP, and how would this approach differ for different partner types?
Well, we had a mixture. I think we didn't, it's hardware and software companies, and it didn't specify whether they're selling through, a particular route to market, if it's a reseller channel, whether it's 1-tier or 2-tier. I think it would be a snapshot that's reflected of the heterogeneity in our industry. So that's one thing. I don't think that we feel like there's more or less progress. In fact, we cut the data a bunch of different ways to see if are software firms above a certain size better than hardware firms. We couldn't really find a predictor, whether it was size, industry, to really speak to that. Even percentage of revenue coming through the channel was surprisingly not really a predictor. So it's kind of across the board trends. I think that the challenges that we highlighted here are going to be consistent regardless of the go-to-market strategy. And I think the questions that need to be answered are the same. However, the types of analytics you would do might be very different if you're selling through a reselling channel versus through partners that play more of a referral role or play kind of an agent or broker role. I think you would be doing some different types of analytics to really understand how to first of all evaluate their performance given the value they provide, but also how to maybe optimize the investment. Just for example, the concept of a run rate for a referral partner or an ISV that's providing influence doesn't necessarily make sense, right? So I think that the questions are the same, the challenges are the same, but the methodologies and what you would be using analytics to do and how you would use that, I think would vary. Alex, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would 100%, and I'll add two other factors in here. I think one element is data quality. I think we all identify data quality as being a key obstacle or key barrier, and I think one of the functions around what are the analytics that companies can do is really a function of data quality, which is actually a function of how a company goes to market as well. So all three of those things are actually linked. So the first thing I'd say is that the type of analytics that companies do is in part a function of their go-to-market strategy. The other thing that I'd say, which I thought was an interesting observation, was that companies who tend to have a mix of direct and indirect go-to-market strategies tend to struggle with this a bit more than companies that have a pure channel approach. And I think this ties back to John's last point around channel DNA. I think there are some companies that we've worked with and who we've surveyed and interviewed that find it difficult to apply the same rigor and analytical methodologies in the channel space when they don't have the same level of confidence in the data, and as a result, they go basically to the lowest hanging fruit, which is the direct part of the business, and as a result, leave the channel side of the business kind of hanging a bit. So in terms of where companies sit on the maturity spectrum, generally we find that the companies that have used the more advanced techniques and use the more advanced approaches on their channel business are the ones that really rely more on their channel business and their channel go-to-market approach.
Excellent. Excuse me. Another question, do runners assesses share of wallet partner data, for example, the vendor's dollar volume as a % of overall volume?
Yeah, I think that this is an area where it's definitely an area where there's interest. I think some of the challenges we're seeing is obviously being able to accurately measure the wallet, right? I think that it's difficult in our industry, particularly certain sectors, to get competitive share information. And so what we're seeing a lot of companies doing is trying to get some indication from the partners themselves as to what how much of their business is being driven by a particular vendor. And I think that's imperfect at best, to be honest with you. I've kind of been skeptical in some cases of people that are reporting their share of wallet to like the third or fourth decimal place, right? But there's another approach that we're seeing, which I think is kind of getting at the same question, and that is looking at how much energy partners are investing in promoting a particular vendor on their website and through digital marketing. And so what we see some of the leaders doing is going out and essentially across a large number of partners scraping information off of their partners' websites, looking at different campaigns and so forth, and use that as a way to say, look, this is an indication of where their loyalty lies, and it's also a good kind of proxy for the importance we have in their business. So while it's not like the super accurate, super precise share of wallet information, it's a good indication of whether you're capturing mind share. So I think that's sort of what we're seeing is doing the best you can with the data that's available, but supplementing that with some of these newer kind of digital listening techniques.
Cool. Someone was wondering if they would be able to use some of the data that you presented if they provide the proper citations and give you guys credit for like blog post or something.
Absolutely. We just would love to know how you're doing it, and so if you can just maybe shoot us a note to let us know that. And if you're trying to quote Alex, you need to include his picture along with any quote. That's the joke. But yeah, I think absolutely. I think we're sharing this publicly now since it's been a little bit of time. But as long as we know how it's being used, we're comfortable with this being shared.
Excellent. Our organization has pockets of solid channel data, but in general, we struggle with poor data quality. How can we use the data that we have while we iron out our issues?
Good. I'm shocked that this wasn't the first question. And I guess, so this is going to sound provocative, but it's my observation that too often bad data is an excuse, is being used as an excuse for progress. And I think that from what we've seen is that there when there's a situation where we have some bad data and some good data pockets, you should focus on on the areas where you do have good data, first of all, and then also focus on the types of questions you can answer that don't require a super high degree of accuracy, right? So I think, I think that if you're, as long as you're trying to get, directional answers to questions, that's better than making kind of guesses, right, based on rules of thumb or hunches. So I guess what I would say is try to use the data you have, and exactly, I guess the second part of that question is, in parallel, improve the data quality, but use it, learn from it, set expectations. Alex, this question you get all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the advice that I always give is threefold. I think the first one is, to your point, John, is focus on the good data and the questions that you can answer. The second one is then look at the processes for collecting the data and look to improve the processes. And then the third one is there's actually an increasing amount of technology that's out there that can be used to clean up data and refine it and also enhance it as well. And so use all three of those mechanisms, and obviously the time frames that for each one will vary, and also levels. But those are the three main levers that the companies have to really drive this.
Great. How have you seen companies improve the governance of channel data when different functional groups are not aligned, like how the data should be used?
Yeah, and I think this gets to, we had about 15% of people speak to sort of the organizational issues. One thing that we're seeing, particularly in large companies, is that there's so much kind of fervor around this idea that you have analytics teams, resources now popping up in sales operations, channel operations, finance, marketing, in some cases the supply chain group. And I think the first thing to do is to try to clearly define, who's on first and who's doing what. I think that would be the first thing that I've seen, is to have a kind of a good blueprint for how, the organization is using analytics. And then I think it's getting aligned around the objectives, and this really speaks to the need for executive sponsorship. It's difficult to actually make progress in areas like this with grassroots efforts because of just the time and investment that's required. So I think that the companies that have progressed further have an executive. It could be the channel chief, could be head of sales, could be the CMO that is passionate about data-driven decisions. And they drive this as a priority, and maybe I guess the third one I'd call out is just it's helpful to have a smaller pilot where you can demonstrate some success and use that as a way to orient everyone who's involved. If everybody's clear that there's a common objective and a project that you're working on that requires coordination across organizational silos, then you can set up governance around that particular project, and that's a little bit easier to get done than trying to transform your organization all at once.
Excellent. If you had to start with one type of channel analytics that would have the greatest impact for most organizations, what would you choose to do?
It's hard. It's kind of I'll give two. One is to segment partners based on, gross margin or operating margin. If you think about, I'm sure most of the folks on the call, most tech companies are struggling with this issue of getting their partners to focus on newer, higher margin services and solutions where they've traditionally focused on legacy products that are commoditizing, right? So everybody has that dilemma, right? How do we get people to sell cloud services, more solution sales, our new product line? By segmenting partners based on their their gross margin, just starting there, it gives you an indication of how product mix varies, and also the impact of pricing and discounting. That it opens up a lot of eyes whenever we do that. The other one would be, I guess, my tie is this run rate analysis that Alex highlighted. I think it really helps to show statistically that there's a certain amount of business that is going to be coming in the door regardless of whether there's incremental investment, and then work from there. So, getting to the run rate analysis and moving towards, looking at what the potential opportunity is above run rate at a partner level, that would be the other one. Alex, you got a vote?
Yeah, I think so I'm gonna I agree with both of those two, and I'd actually add a third, which is the last one that I went through, which is around the cross-sell and the upsell opportunities. And the reason why I say that is because by starting to identify the cross-sell and the upsell opportunities, even though it's probably one of the harder things to do, it gives real tangible evidence to your partners around the benefits of analytics, and they're all part of the data ecosystem. So by giving them and showing them the benefits and helping them identifying opportunities within their installed base of customers, what that does, it then gives them an incentive to share more information back with you, and it starts the virtuous circle. So it's maybe not the easiest one to start off with, but it's a good one to start focusing on, just because I think the benefits in the longer term are twofold and exponential, to the business overall.
Excellent. Once opportunities are identified through analytics, have best practices been identified on how to develop these opportunities with partners, partner-led or vendor-led or collaborative?
So maybe John,
I can probably
take that one.
Yeah, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So that's a really good question, and I think just from our experience, we're probably, I'd say maybe a few months away from starting to really think about that. What we've done so far is very much, I'll kind of talk about it maybe we're at the enablement stage, which is, let's take the actual opportunities, let's then put them in front of our sales resources and validate them with the sales resources. And then where we are at the moment is basically building tools which are augmented and fit into the CRM systems and work conjointly with the CRM systems, so that as sales reps or partner account managers are working with their partners, it can help them have that more formalized dialogue around that. So where we are at the moment is really just around enabling the channel account managers and the partner account managers have those conversations with partners. But the results have been very beneficial. I think they've been very positive. The next stage is really kind of following through on how best to enable partners to actually drive those opportunities, which I think that we're still waiting to get some of the data back. But the uptick in terms of the results has been so far it's been quite impressive. It's been an uptick of 20% in terms of revenue relative to a similar control group that aren't getting that data. So the partners are certainly seeing the benefit. I mean, John, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add. I think maybe answer from a different angle, which is tell a story a little bit. I used to, before joining ZS, be with a large reseller, and I remember one of our big partners did this type of analysis. They tried to basically point out where there are opportunities in our installed base. They did some really cool analysis and dumped this spreadsheet on us that we were supposed to use, and you could predict the outcome. No one on our sales team could use the spreadsheet, and we didn't follow up on the opportunities. So there's something there about the delivery and the enablement of the reseller or the partner sales team as well as the channel sales team, and I think that was 5 years ago. To me, I've just been really impressed with. There's a number of companies that are putting out some really powerful tools, either for the channel account manager or for the partners themselves. I'm sure they're folks that you've seen in Baptiste. So I won't run through the names, but I think we're at a point where there's just a lot more available that addresses that kind of enablement. So to the extent that a company is able to do some of this analysis to come up with the insights, the ability to deliver those insights directly to a channel sales rep or a partner sales rep, I think we've made big advancements of that in the last year to 18 months. So kind of hopeful for as companies develop in this area, we're going to see some kind of breakthroughs in performance as a result.
Excellent. Well, it looks like all the questions, and we've hit the top of the hour again. So, John, Alex, thank you very much for sharing your time and knowledge with us.
Thank you. Great question. Sorry, went a little long, but this is helpful.
I think it was fantastic. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. Please do take a few moments to fill out your post-event survey on your way out. Your input is very important to us, and we love hearing what you have to say and use it towards future events. But that is concluding today's conference, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.